Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris here with you for another week. It was your choice this week, and we are going back to 1994, nearly 30 years covering Stratovarius' Dreamspace. But before we get there, my friend Chris, how are you doing?
Pretty good. I'm going to try to go this entire episode without calling it Dreamscape. So that's my goal for the evening.
I can't promise you that I do the same. I screw this up constantly. But I got to be honest, it was, for me, I had a very enjoyable week of listening. A couple of things came out this week that really blew me away. The first album that I heard was a band called My Soliloquy. They're out of the UK, and it features, Pete Morton as the singer and guitar player. He actually played on one or two of the old Threshold albums. And he's got Johan on drums from Threshold, and he comes out with this progressive metal album, but it's really melodic and really, really catchy. They had come out with an album, I guess, probably about 6 years ago now called Engines of Gravity, and I remember that album being very good, and then I completely forgot about it. So when I saw that this album had kind of come out, I immediately grabbed it, and I was really impressed. I just thought it was one of those things where the choruses and some of the vocal lines were really, really good. So I would highly recommend that. And another album, which I recommended to you, was an album called Arcade Metal by a guy by the name of Andy Gillian, also out of the UK, probably better known for his time in Moore's Prince of Est as their guitar player and songwriter. This sounds nothing like melodic death metal. This sounds like the Lost video game soundtrack to like Final Fight, but just jazzed up. Really, really good. He's got a slew of guests on this thing. And the second I heard this album, I said to myself, this is not only the best instrumental album that I think I've heard this year, but I immediately thought of you because of your affinity for video games. I said to myself, you're going to love this.
Yeah, I am looking forward to giving it a listen. I actually did a little bit of digging, and it turns out that this guy's done some soundtracks for some other video games, stuff I had not heard of. But I went on to find out that I had one of his songs. It was a OC remix that he did for a Mario Kart game. So apparently I was aware of him, but I am looking forward to hearing this album. I listened to a little bit of one of the songs, and I could tell immediately that it was something I was going to enjoy quite a bit. So,
for instrumental albums, I know it's got to be like in that right spot or that right zone for you, but I think this is it. Like I said, I said Final Fight. I think that's an apt comparison. To me, it sounds like Streets of Rage or something in that vein, but just a lot of fun and a lot of quarters being pumped into an arcade machine in like 1990 or something like that.
Yeah, now we just play arcade games for free.
Yes. It's funny how things have changed.
Once you part with $1,700, and then you can play for free all you want.
Yeah, listen, I think it's worth a lot of. I mean, that's a lot of quarters. So investment well spent. Did you catch anything yourself this week that you listened to?
No, I don't think I did.
There you go.
It's just, oh my God. What I listened to this Dreamspace album by Stratovarius, which actually kind of made me go back and also listen to Twilight Time. But no, nothing really new, honestly. Other than you had told me about this Mantric Momentum, which is a looks like it's a side project of the Harroy. I believe they're brothers. One is Turge from Pure Maze, and the other is Krister, I believe, from Divided Multitude. And it reminded me of something that either one of those bands would have put out. The song's called In the Heart of the Broken, and they're coming out with an album called Trial by Fire. I'm looking forward to it. I thought it was a pretty cool tune.
Yeah, they good songwriting on that. I think both bands are kind of in the same vein, not terribly far apart from each other. I've been really digging the Pure Maze stuff, and quite frankly, I am a big fan of the more recent Divided Multitude albums as well. So it was a hit for me. I'm trusting that the album will sound just as good as the single did. So good stuff, good stuff. But I want to ask you, what made you choose this Stratovarius album? Obviously, we've done Fourth Dimension. I think it's possible that either Visions or even Destiny might have been like the next guess if I had to pick one in terms of another album that we were going to cover. Why did you go back in time and go to Dreamspace a year prior?
Because people were talking about it on our Facebook group.
I like
I
it.
mean, it was interesting. I think it was Brian who made the initial post, and then Mike Johnson kind of chimed in, and I think I had the intent on listening to the whole album like a week or two ago when the discussion came up, and I got through a couple of songs and then I didn't get a chance to finish it, and then that kind of made me want to cover it even more so I could listen to the rest of it, because it's kind of like I feel like it's kind of like a forgotten Stratovarius album, because it's the last one with Timo Tolkki. It's also the first one with bass player Jari Kainulainen. And it's kind of like in a way, it's like at the end of an era, because, there's 3 albums with Timo Tolkki on vocals, and then after this, it's all Timo Coltipelto comes in. And like you said, we've done Fourth Dimension. And I think this is a really interesting choice, because it also kind of reminds me of a time when there were like 5 Stratovarius albums, basically. So like, I never owned Fright Night. I still to this day don't own Fright Night, but I remember getting this and Twilight Time and Fourth Dimension and Episode and Visions, and those being pretty much, I don't think Fright Night was available. I don't think we were able to get it. I don't think Noise Records didn't carry it. I believe it was like on the CBS label, and then I don't think it was out of print in the U.S. I don't know if it ever went back into print in the U.S., frankly. I don't even know if it's on iTunes or Spotify. It's like a weird it came out in 1989, which is crazy to think that Strato goes back that far. But I think I've listened to it like once or twice, and it's just like kind of like, it's just a little too dated for me. I feel like this album is kind of where Stratovarius, I think, really started hitting their stride. Even though there are some really good songs on Twilight Time, this I think is a more complete album. It's ambitious with 14 songs. There's one that's kind of short, but I mean it's 13 full length songs. It's a lot of stuff for an older 1994 album, but there's a lot of really good tunes on here. So yeah, I thought that it deserved some love, and I also figure like probably going forward we're going to be aiming forward as far as Stratovarius goes, as far as doing an episode, if you will. Shout out to Ian for that one, and as well as Visions and Destiny and Infinite and so on and so forth. Whereas I don't know if we're going to continue to go backwards anytime soon in the Stratovarius pantheon. So, it's interesting. It's interesting because I remember a time where hearing a Stratovarius song with Timo Tolkki singing was just as common to me as hearing a song with theirs with Timo Coltipelto, and so it's become so distant now that there was a time where Timo Tolkki was singing for this band. What are your memories of hearing this for the first time and getting the album and all that good stuff?
I mentioned in the past how Black Diamond off of Visions was like the gateway drug for me. That was the song that just blew my mind, got me off the Metallica train and then onto the European stuff, just because I had never heard anything like it. And when I heard it, I got Visions, I got Episode, I got Fourth Dimension, and I think I played the albums just on repeat for like 2 years. And it got to the point where I just had to have more Stratovarius. Destiny wasn't even a thing at this point. So I found out about these first 3 albums, including Fright Night, and I bought all 3 of them. So I actually own Fright Night on CD. Ask me how many times I've listened to it. No, but kidding aside, I was never...
Did you have to get it from eBay?
No, I bought a brand new copy of the album imported, and I think I spent like $35 for it.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
That was a lot of money back in 1997.
A lot of money now to pay for an album.
I mean, yeah, but it's even more when you're 16 and broke. But like, nonetheless, I bought the album. I had to hear it. It's collecting dust in my attic. But my point is, this album of those, I was actually, for a long time, I would argue that Twilight Time was my preferred album of the 2 between this and Dreamspace. I actually prefer Twilight Time. I didn't have a chance to go back and listen to it this week. But I played the shit out of these albums. And the reason I played them so much is just because I was addicted to Timo Tolkki's songwriting. And although I don't think the vocals are anything magnificent by any stretch of the imagination, I did gravitate towards a lot of these songs just because, especially on Dreamspace, you can hear the foundation that would become Fourth Dimension. Fourth Dimension was a power metal classic and then would just start a run of fantastic albums. This album is a lot more diverse. This album is kind of all over the place in terms of the styles and the types of songs, but the power metal classics that are on this disc may as well have been on Fourth Dimension with just crappier production and worse vocals. I mean, like, that's really what it is, in my opinion. You can hear like what the band was becoming, but that being said, it was a trip to go back because I haven't listened to this album in probably 20 years. It's been that long just because I moved on to other things, and if I wanted to get my fill of Stratovarius, I would either listen to the new stuff or I'd go back and I'd listen to Destiny. But I can't tell you the last time I listened to this album. Easily 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, it's definitely has such a nostalgic quality to it. Even just looking at that cover art, that looks like somebody took a 3-week course in graphics design and then just kind of crapped out a album cover. Although that was kind of how Stratovarius did album covers back then with their weird jagged logo, and it was, they hadn't quite reached that stylized point where I feel like Visions, the logo changed and the cover art was so grandiose after like all these albums that were kind of bland. And I don't even know what this Dreamspace album cover makes me think of. It's just this ball floating on a glass cube with I don't know. It's probably not even worth talking about for as long as I just did. But Twilight Time to me was always like, I don't know. I always thought it didn't hold a candle to Dreamspace. There are songs on Twilight Time that are my favorite Stratovarius songs ever, including The Hands of Time and especially Out of the Shadows. I think that song is incredible. But this is like a solid 20 minutes longer. It feels just like a more full album. The production's better. I don't know that the production from this to Fourth Dimension was that much of a jump. It's just that I think the vocals were so improved that it actually sounds like it's maybe more polished, but I don't know that I don't know if it's just Timo Tolkki's voice or the production of his voice. It sounds tinnier. Even though I really like Timo Tolkki's voice, I think he's an underrated vocalist. I just think Timo Kolttipelto has just got such a smoother voice. But I don't know that, like, I just circling back, I don't know that it sounds really that much different from Fourth Dimension. It's just, I think having a different singer changes the dynamic of the sound completely.
I agree with the singing approach. I think to me the biggest difference is the keyboards, right? Like, here they're, for the most part, except for one or two songs, which I'll get to, but it's kind of an ancillary instrument, whereas it's really more front and center, I think, on Fourth Dimension, and I think it sounds better on Fourth Dimension, and I think that that's a big reason for why the band got quote unquote better, more popular, whatever you want to call it. The keyboards mixed with the vocals took them to a new stratosphere. No pun intended. But it was interesting to go back because my memory of this album was a little bit different than what I found myself gravitating to this week. We'll get to it. Just by way of history, it's 1994. The album comes out on February 9th. It's Timo Tolkki on lead guitars and vocals. It's Antti Ikonen on keyboards. 2 drummers on this album on different tracks. Tuomo Lasala, who would obviously be with the band for quite a while, and Sami Kokamaki on drums on about 5 tracks, and Jari on bass, who you mentioned. Kind of a very different lineup than you would see just a couple of years later, to say the least. This was like the end of an era, but at the same time, Tolkki's songwriting was clearly heading in a different direction.
Yeah, this is kind of like that classic Stratovarius lineup kind of starting to splinter off. The next album, obviously, Timo Kotipelto would become the vocalist, and as we talked about when we talked about Fourth Dimension, Tuomo and Antti both that would be their last album, and then Episode would kind of welcome in I think one of the classic, probably the most classic, pre Tolkki leaving the band lineup, or it might have just been their lineup all the way up until the point where Timo Tolkki left the band. But that was when Jens Johansson joined the fold and Jorg Michael on drums, and it was Jorg, Jens, Jari, and the 2 Timos. And I think that was like that classic Stratovarius lineup that I think of, just because that late 90s era was kind of like such a big time for me getting into metal. So I always think of the lineups of that time. I think of Halloween with Roland and Uli and Wyke and Andy and Marcus, like just those being such a classic time, or the Gamma Ray lineup of that time, or Ed Guy,
These bands were delivering like consistently great album after great album at this point. They really hit their stride. And I think that's why first of all, it's when we got into it, but it's also kind of why we consider it the quote unquote classic lineup, right? Because it was just a run of solid albums by all of the bands you mentioned.
Yeah. So this is kind of, it's almost like this is like the peak of the Timo Tolkki, Antti Ikonen, Tuomo Lasila era. But it was the only album really that like they peaked and then it was over, because by the next album, Timo Kotipelto was their singer. Still the same lineup, more or less. But I think just having Timo Kotipelto as vocalist changed the dynamic of the band in such a way. And I think that because of that, I feel like this album, Dreamspace, gets kind of forgotten about, because for the sheer difference of not having Timo Kotipelto on vocals. But man, there are some really, really good songs on this album. I mean, this is like Fourth Reich was one of the first Stratovarius songs I ever heard. I remember Ralph playing that song for us back in the day, and I think that was the reason why I had an interest in getting this album. I might have told the story before, but I didn't buy this album. Mike bought this album. I remember he ordered it on CD Now, and the package came in the mail, and he opened it up, and sure enough, there were 2 copies in there. So he just handed me the other one. It goes, Merry Christmas, Christmas in July. And I was like, I'll always remember that I got this album for free thanks to Mike Crea, and CD Now with a shipping snafu. So, but then I would get to actually listen to the rest of the album, and there's like there were so many songs on this album that were just like, damn, this is really good. Maybe there's a clunker.
I'm gonna argue there's a couple.
There's one song I really don't care for. I really do like. I like pretty much all the songs on the album minus the one, to a certain degree. Some more than others. I'll
say this: I don't think there's a ton of bad songs on the album, although I think there's a couple. I just think that there's different degrees of love, and I don't love every song. I think there's a lot of songs that are good or that I like them, but I don't know that I love them. I think it's a little top heavy with a smattering of good songs throughout the rest of the album. And then there's a little bit of a lull in certain places where it's like I could take it or leave it. And you mentioned this earlier. It's a very meaty album. So when you're listening to it, it takes a while to get through. It doesn't feel like a short album. It feels like a long album. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. I just think that if you took maybe the best 10 or 11 songs and dropped off 3 or 4, you'd have a stronger album, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But let's get into it. The album kicks off with a song called Chasing Shadows, which if you didn't know any better, it might as well be on Fourth Dimension for my purposes. This is your standard power metal tune. Well done. It's a good choice for an opener. Double bass drum on full display and a real banger of a tune. Arguably Tolki's best performance as a vocalist on the entire album. And this is really, I think, the start of the quote unquote modern or classic era of Stratovarius in terms of the formula that they would employ for the next 5 albums.
That opening guitar riff is just so Timo Tolkki. Like it's such a distinct tone and sound. Like it just, as soon as it kicks in, you know you're listening to a Stratovarius album. The drums sound almost like electronic. Like I feel like the drums don't sound nearly as good as they would go on to sound. I think when Jörg Michael would join the band,
I think he's a better drummer. I mean, I think that there's tracks here where again you have 2 different drummers on this album, and there's moments for both, I guess. But I don't think the drums are the highlight here. I think it really just accompanies.
It's not a very focused instrument, and just same with the keys, like you said. I don't think that they're a huge part of this album. There are parts which we will point out, but this is a very guitar driven album, whereas I think especially when Jens would join the band, it would really become a keyboard and guitar like 50-50 effort. And I think that Timo took that magic that Jens had with Yngwie and kind of recreated it within Stratovarius, that key versus guitar. That I mean, like you said, Black Diamond, it was just like you fall in love with the band. You hear that song within a minute, you're a Stratovarius fanatic.
100%.
Yeah. So this is like a totally different kind of vibe because you just pop it on and you're just like, all right, it's a really good heavy metal, power metal, heavy guitar kind of song, catchy chorus, fast, like I said, double bass, fast bass song, good stuff. It's not, I don't know if I would put it in like my top 3 or 4 songs on the album, even though I think it's a good song.
Top half, I would say, but not top 3 or 4, in my opinion.
I might say this might be controversial, and you might disagree. I think that the first 8 songs on this album are great. Like, I think to varying degrees, but like from Chasing Shadows all the way to Dreamspace, like this is a very strong album. And I feel like you said, you might even, if you like knocked out most of the end of the album and just like went from Dreamspace and then cut right to Shattered and Wings of Tomorrow, it might be a much more even album. But I mean, I had forgotten how much I liked some of these other songs like Magic Carpet Ride and We Are the Future. And
I'm going to take umbrage with that. Ooh, we'll get there.
But this is just kind of the start of things. And then it goes into Fourth Reich, which, I think we talked about this last week with Royal Hunt, but just the idea of being able to be a master of different tempos. And this song has a much darker and mid-tempo kind of a marching kind of vibe. I mean, it's called Fourth Reich, and I think that the sound of the song really goes along with it. And I remember when hearing it for the first time in high school and being like, wow, this is so unlike any of the other Stratovarius I've heard, but yet still really fascinating. And I have a lot of this is probably the song I'm most nostalgic towards on this album.
I agree.
Again, not my favorite song, but like really good. The that kind of like 21st century Fox drum fill at the beginning. That's what it made me think of. I heard it in the car the other day, and I was like waiting for Star Wars to start. But yeah, another cool song. It starts out like really kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Eerie, and then it kind of kicks in, and there's a cool version of this on one of the singles that they released later on. You could hear Timo Kotipelto sing this song, which I thought was really neat.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it. I think that his performance live of this song is phenomenal, and I think that Tolkien, as good as he is or as he's trying to be, he holds this one back just a touch. I loved this song when we were kids. I still think it's the best song on the album. It's not my song of the week, but the pacing and the imagery and the lyrics, I mean, it is a very powerful tune, and it's very, like, the drumming is so simple on this, but effective. And I think it really does help drive the song. It is a very emotional story told in what, like in under 6 minutes, but it's a really, I mean, Fourth Reich will just kind of give it away. You can kind of guess what it's about. A really good song, and when Kotipelto belts out some of those notes during the chorus, he really drives the point home. It's really good stuff, and I can see why they put it towards the front of this album, because you don't want this buried on the back half of the album.
Yeah, without getting too deep into the weeds, the lyrics are very poignant even today, I think, and the idea of, like, passing on kind of a crappy future to our children. And I think that a song like I'm thinking of Paradise from Visions, it feels like something that Timo Tolkki has always kind of had his finger on the pulse of like the future and taking care of the world and things like that. And I think that this song is kind of maybe some of the earlier example of him kind of delving into that kind of content. I thought Stratovarius always had, like, some really good lyrics for a band that I kind of expected, maybe because they were from Finland, they might not have had as good of a grasp on English, but I don't know. I think this song is pretty loud and clear what it's trying to say, and I think it's a really powerful and moving kind of song.
Yeah, no question. And then after two very good tracks, they go into Eyes of the World, which is a real gem. And quite frankly, I don't like the fact that they don't play this song live at all anymore, and they really don't touch this album much. But the guitar tone on this one is just fantastic, and it kind of starts like a slow power ballad before it picks up. And it reminds me a lot of Dokken, in the sense that both the intro and the chorus sounds like Dream Warriors from the Friday the 13th soundtrack.
Yep. It's or Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, that's it. Nightmare on Elm Street. It's like it harkens back to those movies in the 80s, and, like, the keyboards just provide a really nice complement. I think the guitar solo might be the best on the album. I really enjoy it, but yet it somehow is uplifting as it may be, that it's dark in spots too. And to your point, maybe it's forecasting the future in many ways, but I think this is a really strong track and very underrated.
This was a song I remember when I first got this album, it really called out to me. Like, I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I thought that like, again, it's lyrically, like, it's kind of saying, like, hey, like, why are you giving me a hard time? We're all the same. And again, I think it's Timo Tolkki kind of preaching for equality. I don't know if he was, like, maybe bullied, and this was kind of his way of coping with that. But I think that melodically, it really works. The chorus, I want to say Mike was a big fan of the song. If memory serves, he can confirm that if he's done doing his violin solo. But yeah, this is a really good tune. I like I said, I think so far that they're 3 for 3 as far as this album goes from the start.
We'll make it 4 for 4. I think Hold On to Your Dream has always been a favorite of mine off this album. It is infectiously upbeat and catchy, And when I hear it, I almost hear like a modern day Avantasia sound. It's got like the gallop, the patented metal exchange gallop during the verses. And it's one of those songs that I think Colta Pelto would do a lot of justice to. Yeah, exactly. It's not really that fancy of a tune. It's just a short, sweet, enjoyable song, and it's definitely 4 for 4 in my eyes.
Yeah, this is my song of the week. I've always been a big fan of this song. There's a very funny clip. If you could get a hold, I think it's out of print, but if you get a hold of the Infinite Visions DVD, which was one of the first DVDs I owned, like not first music DVDs, but like literally one of the first physical DVDs that I bought after buying a DVD player. And God, that was a long time ago. That was over 20 years ago. But there's a clip of Timo Tolkki and Timo Colti Pelto performing this song acoustically, just sitting on two stools.
Wow.
And Timo Colti Pelto finishes the first chorus, and I don't know if there just was a lot of people there or whatever, but there was like, I guess Timo Tolkki didn't get the response that he liked, and he just goes, "Come on, what the fuck is that?"
That's great.
My God.
I've never seen that DVD.
I'll see if I can dig up the clip from YouTube, because it makes me laugh. I put it on a power hour just because I thought it was so funny that he was just like, you could do better, crowd. I mean, for all we know, it was the same amount of people that were there to see Eternity X play with Ed Guy. But I always think of that, and it was cool hearing Timo Colti Pelto sing the song. But I think this is one of the best Timo Tolkki sung era songs.
No question.
Of Stratovarius, and I'm a big fan. So why don't we give it a listen? I remember thinking, even at a young age, that these were really uplifting song lyrics, that like you should leave the negativity that's in your past in the past and kind of move forward, and that there's positivity and things to look forward to, and like just like it says, hold on to your dream. I mean, it's a really I think it's a really positive message. It could also, I think, be kind of considered like, don't give up on love. If you're, I think I kind of took that as a teenager, like hold on to your dream. Like, he even says like, this is your chance, your love, your romance. Like, it's a little cheesy, but I kind of liked it. I thought it was really uplifting, and I look forward to, if people don't remember this album that well, I look forward to them getting a chance to listen to this song, because it's a really good tune. It's
a feel-good tune, and I think that the album needs it, because a lot of it, including the second half, is really dark, and this provides a nice contrast. Let's talk about
this album definitely takes you for a ride, like as far as thematically, it can get like happy and dark really quick, back and forth.
For sure. And speaking of rides, let's talk about Magic Carpet Ride, which is the next track. We're going to disagree here. Talk about the positives of this song before I shred it to pieces. Go ahead, please.
I remember earlier in the week when it came out, I was like, oh man, this song sucks. But then like the more I listened to it, I remembered that the chorus is awesome. Like the song is mediocre at best, but then when it gets into the welcome to the land of mystery, welcome to the land of secrets, it's like, oh, there's a decent song in here. The beginning of it's like really paint by numbers, mid pace, trying to sound kind of like I have a kind of a Middle Eastern vibe to it, which I think sometimes while that can work. See Home by Dream Theater. There's other times where it sounds almost like kind of boring. I feel like this starts out that way, but I think that I think the chorus keeps it from being like a bad song. I don't think it's a great song, but I think it's like you said, it kind of fits. I think fit after this really like fast paced, uplifting song, something a little bit more dreary, I guess.
A rebuttal, counselor?
Please.
You hit a lot of the points that I was going to make. This is not Knights of Arabia by Camelot, right? Like this is not the best version of that Middle Eastern sound. My issue with it, though, is not for any of the reasons you stated. We often talk about keyboards being either a primary instrument or a perfect complement to the track. Here, it's not the primary instrument, but it doesn't provide the complement. It actually overwhelms the tune for me. And like, it's actually distracting from the rest of the song. I think that the keyboards, the cheap keyboards, the sampled keyboards overpower the rest of what might otherwise be a decent track. And it completely takes me out of the moment on this one. And I think that when you combine that with the fact that Tolkien is trying too hard to sing well on this track, he almost sounds whiny. He takes me out of the moment completely. I am not a fan of this song, if you haven't guessed.
Yeah, I see. I think it redeems itself more towards the middle. Like the chorus, I think the keys do actually complement the song, and I think there's more keys in the solo parts than I think in a lot of this album. It's just that like that kind of meandering intro that like you hear it and you're just kind of like, here comes another boring power metal, styling of some Middle Eastern song that they're gonna, inevitably screw up.
Yeah, Mireth, they're not.
But I mean, I think it redeems itself. It's not my favorite song on the album, but I ended up liking it a hell of a lot more than I remembered liking it. I think if you had asked me, what do you think of this song before this week, I would have pretty much given verbatim everything you just said as my response.
Fair enough. Moving on as fast as I can, We Are the Future, the next track. This is another track that could have opened the album, and it's your classic power metal tune with the double bass drum and everything else. But
could have ended the album too. It would have been a good way to end it too.
This song is really good, and I actually like it better than Chasing Shadows. I think it's a little more diverse, and there's a little bit of almost like a Legions vibe to it, where it's like a precursor to what they would actually sound like on Visions in certain parts with a song like Legions. This is an underrated song. And the bridge. Does the bridge remind you of anything? Because I kept hearing the bridge and saying to myself, this is a tribute to blank.
I will listen to it right now, and I will tell you. It does sound very familiar.
I'm going to say it.
Yeah, tell me.
Keeper of the Seven Keys, the song.
Okay.
I hear, to me, this may as well be a Halloween tribute song, but as good as it is, it's a good song, and it's well done. I actually was close to naming it my song of the week, but I'm going to go with something else. But I thoroughly enjoyed this track.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because they literally mentioned Future World later on this album, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But this is again like these are the songs that I gravitated towards when I was younger, when I was kind of diving into this older Stratovarius stuff. Is these really upbeat? Like, I mean, I guess it's really not that different than what I like now. Just like upbeat power metal that sucks you in, that you like right away. Again, it's Timo Tolkki, writing these lyrics about making sure that the Earth is still here in the future. I feel like this is something that he's always felt really strong about, and this is again more of this. Let's stop destroying the world, whether he means that in a political sense or a nature sense or whatever it may be. But then he does it in such a catchy kind of melodic sort of way. But now I'm hearing it. Yeah, the Keeper of the Seven Keys. When you said bridge, I was thinking of before the first chorus.
No. Later on, I should have made that clear.
Yeah. This was definitely lifted from the great Michael Wycath. But I think that Timo Oli's lovingly would borrow from Halloween. It was almost like Stratovarius was kind of a marriage of Halloween and Yngwie in a lot of ways, especially these early times. But yeah, oh my God, yes, absolutely true. But yeah, agree. Really, really good song and very upbeat leading up to a song that is not so upbeat.
Yeah, oh yeah, no question about it. Tears of Ice starts off like the cave theme for Final Fantasy, right? Like it just almost has like a video game quality to it. It's, I mean, flute solo and all, right? It's a ballad. It's whimsical. It is definitely not my favorite song on the album. It's drawing the listener in, and you're waiting for the payoff. You're waiting for the big spot, and it just kind of never happens. So it's like a love-hate thing I have with this song. I like it, but I want more, and I never get it. But it's the first true ballad on the album, and it certainly has its place. It's just not my favorite because when I think of songs like Forever that are going to come out a couple of years later, I mean, that's a ballad.
Yeah. I still really like this one. I you know me and ballads. Like, this was a song I really loved at the time, and it's just such ham-fisted lyrics. Like it's not subtle. Like, someone broke this man's heart and he wrote a song about it.
Yes. No argument there.
Yeah, it's not subtle, but sometimes that's okay. Sometimes you just need to get slapped in the face with a ham to really get what happened to you when your heart was broken and your tears turned into ice. I mean, this could have been in a video game. Like, you could have fought like an ice monster who literally cries tears of ice that freeze you, and then you, I don't know, just thinking maybe Pete Sanzone wants to make that RPG finally after all these years. But it's fine. I mean, I think it's well placed. Stick it right in the middle of the album. It shouldn't. I'm glad it wasn't like the last song. Like, we're gonna end the album with like this really kind of cheesy early 90s power metal ballad, but I kind of like the song. It's I don't know, it's heartfelt in kind of a beat you over the head with it sort of way.
Nice. It's different. I'll leave it at that. It brings us to Dreamspace, not Dreamscape. Dreamspace, yep. The title track.
I haven't said it yet.
I'm very impressed, but I want to hear your thoughts on this because this is a really interesting track that I completely forgot about, and I'm wondering if you had the same experience.
Yeah, so I always thought it was fascinating that this was, I want to say this was the only song on the album that was included in the Chosen Ones best of that came out, I want to say in 99. I think it was like everything from Visions and before, I believe. I don't think there was anything from Destiny on there. And this was the one entry from Dreamspace. And so I listened to it a lot because of that. I look back on this song and this might have been number 2 for me as my favorite song. It's awesome. Like it's finally you're getting a song that starts with prominent keyboards, which I think so far in this album has mostly been guitar driven. It's this wacky space, just like out of your mind. Like it's the whole part where things slow down and it's like, I'm losing my mind. Oh my God. It's such a ride. I think it's such a great song. I love this song.
It's like the proggiest song that they had done up until this point in their career for a non-prog band, and they cram so many ideas into a song that's under 6 minutes long, but they do a good job with it, and like it's a really diverse track. The keyboard effects here are really good, really chilling and haunting in a way. I don't even remember this track, even though I played this album so much, and when I went back to it, I'm like, this song is fantastic. This is one of the best songs on the album, and quite frankly, even though it's not going to be my song of the week, I think I got more joy hearing this song for what seemed like the first time. Like your pick of the week was well settled on me just because of this track.
Awesome. I was making dinner the other night, and I told my HomePod to play Dreamspace, thinking it would play the album, and it just played the song instead.
Nice.
And then I went down this rabbit hole of like really well curated power metal songs by different bands that followed. But this song came on, and it was like super loud, and I was just getting so amped listening to it. I was like, man, this song is just awesome. And then this whole like part where in the middle where it just gets like so freaking whacked out, like, and it's interesting. Somebody had mentioned that this was maybe like the early times of Timo Tolkki kind of exploring maybe some of his mental health issues that would become well documented over the years. And this song is very much explaining somebody who's kind of maybe losing their grip a little bit. And it's just so well done. And it's cool that it was paired with like one of the better songs on the album rather than like the lyrics being placed on like Thin Ice, for instance. Yeah. And then you'd forget about it because the song sucked. The slowdown, like oh my God, the way that it kind of builds back up again towards the end, just really good. It kind of, I think, is a little bit of a preview of what like Twilight Symphony would be on the next album, where it feels like there's a lot of different elements to the song, like you said, kind of like in a proggy sort of way. Definitely a big fan of the song. I'm glad to hear you are too.
Yeah, I am. But then the album takes a real turn for me, or at least for before picking up towards the end.
Oh, let me ask you this: what is the beginning of Reign of Terror make you think?
Oh, 100%. If this is not Sirens by Savatage, I don't know what is. I mean, like, and I was going to mention it, so I'm glad you brought it up or alluded to it. This song isn't good. The riff is fine. The verses are boring and the chorus is repetitive. And quite frankly, it's like a poor man's Sirens, like I said. And it's just missing Chris Oliva with his like ridiculous guitar riffs and missing John Oliva on vocals. But this could have been on a Sabotage album 10 years prior.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I just think that after like 8 pretty good songs, I think this is like, I don't know that it's any better or worse than Magic Carpet Ride, I guess. But I guess after like Dreamspace and I don't know, there's just so many good songs. This song is just very middling.
Pedestrian. It's a pedestrian tune.
It's a good song. But that's all it is. Like it's the chorus is uninspired. It's just there. It's just a song. It didn't need to be here.
No, and if you cut it off, the album I think it's addition by subtraction. And speaking of which, we get to Thin Ice. Why? Why do they have to include tracks like this on their albums? This time, I don't like Reign of Terror, but I despise Thin Ice. The vocals are weak. It's repetitive, and it's like creepy to a fault. And I listened to the track a number of times this week. I don't know that there's a redeeming part of this entire song. I think the whole thing sucks. The only thing I can kind of lend credence to or give credit to is the outro. Kind of cool, but even that's not perfect. This track is terrible. It's like the 030366 of Dreamspace. This track sucks. And like, call it where credit, call it where it's due. You got a 60-minute album. Just get rid of this shit, and all of a sudden the album gets better.
I have a theory. I think Timo Tolkki is he was so down to earth and he was so modest. He wanted to remind everybody that he was a human being and not a master of fantastic can't miss songwriting. So in each album, he would lay an egg and leave it there for all the world to smell. And I don't know. I probably. I don't know if I would listen to this 10 more times if it would be any better or worse for me. I just think it's like kind of meandering zombie noise, as to quote George Carlin.
Yeah, it's well said by you and the legend George Carlin.
Though I do believe he was referring to Steely Dan when he said that. But.
It's like the band almost recognized it, because right afterwards they put in this 1 minute instrumental track, which
It's
honestly,
it's the palate cleanser.
I'll tell you something. In its own way, Atlantis is one of the best songs on the album. It is like clinical in its approach to the guitar, and I love the guitar tone. It's just a nice little piece of music that kind of breaks up the album a bit. And honestly, I wish it was longer. I thought it was just a great little piece of music. It's well executed.
Yeah, this used to be like always in contention for when I would make a mixtape and there was only a little bit of space left at the end and you only had room for like a minute and a half of a song.
Don't let the tape go to waste.
Yeah, that was... I think Ralph had done that on the very first tape that he made me by adding... I think the last song was like Sorrow by Yngwie, which was only like maybe a minute and 45 seconds or 2 minute song, but like made for a good outro, and it just fit on the very end of the tape. You don't want to just have to sit there listening to silence like an idiot. So that's kind of what this reminds me of. Just short, sweet, to the point, good stuff. Like you said, it would have made for a good full length song. And then, so do we redeem ourselves now that we're back to the proper songs? We have 3 songs left to go, and Abyss is where we're heading back. And when I think of Abyss, I think of a guy in a mask with a bat wrapped in nails.
I knew you were going to go there. It was too easy.
Yeah. Shout out to Joseph Park.
This is a cool song. This has like a Haunted Mansion feel to it, and it picks up kind of nicely. A little bit underrated. It's not my favorite song on the album, but I would say it's probably somewhere in the middle. Very, very simple but effective bass lines that really kind of pop on this, and it's the first time I've mentioned the bass lines on the album. It's a tad repetitive, but it's a good tune. I like Abyss. I don't love it, but I like Abyss.
I think that for whatever reason, that whole the chorus just takes me back to high school. I don't know why. Like I don't remember hearing it other than in high school. And I also it's hitting me now, and I don't think I ever really noticed it before. But like Timo Tolkki, his voice is like almost like a higher pitched Ozzy in a lot of ways. It's got kind of like
I am so happy you mentioned that.
An Ozzy vibe to it. He's the Finnish Ozzy Osbourne.
I was going to say the exact same thing regarding the next track, Shattered. I think this is like a Judas Priest song with Ozzy on vocals. It's really, really fast, and it reminds me of like modern day Primal Fear in that sense. It's good verses, not the most remarkable chorus, but memorable, and it kind of sticks in your head. And Tolkki hits some really good notes on this one. He reminds me of the Finnish version of Ozzy on spots on this record. Like, you took the words out of my mouth. This is a really interesting track that's kind of buried towards the end of the album. I'm a fan of Shattered.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think, another kind of paint by numbers kind of song the way Reign of Terror was, but I think it's just a better version of a paint by numbers song. It's just a really good tune. It's got that classic just Timo Tolkki guitar riff to kick things into oh my god, I forgot about that high note about a minute and a half in. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's like, where did that come from? Where have you been hiding out on us?
I don't think he ever did that one live, but yeah, I thought this was
not
kind
sure
of
he did it in the studio.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And, little audio sweetener never hurt. This is kind of a cool tune to kind of as the penultimate song on the album, which I think finishes off really strong. I had a feeling this would be your song of the week, unless it's Full Moon, which I don't think it is.
It's not. Here's my Wings of Tomorrow is my song of the week. But before I talk about that, why did you think it was going to be my song of the week, other than the fact that I hadn't selected anything yet?
I figured if it wasn't in the first, if it wasn't going to be by the time we got to Dreamspace and you didn't pick anything, I was like, it's got to be this, because nothing else on the rest of the album really comes close, in all honesty.
I
You know what? I'll tell you something. I think Tommy Johansson was a big fan of this song, because if you ever listen to the song Futureland, which he wrote, like, I think it was from the Rainseed demo, and it never saw the light of day until he re-recorded it with Majestica on their debut album, you can definitely hear the influence of this song, with that just super majestic keyboards. It's I think that they go in this direction again with "We Hold the Key" on Fourth Dimension, with that sound where it just sounds like this triumphant royal march. This could have been my song of the week as well. I put it with Dreamspace and "Hold On to Your Dream" as the big three on this album.
Let's give it a listen, and then I'll give in my thoughts in a couple.
Over the world, can you feel it? Message is spreading among all the people. Future is calling. History is leaving behind. Nobody's thinking about the past days. If you want to have a look in future worlds, have an open mind, now it is your turn. Don't join our forces to this keep on the wings of
I had mentioned that this was a meaty album. This is a really good way to end it. It has this really epic keyboard intro, and it's very, very spacey sounding, almost like an Arion or something like that. But it's this anthemic conclusion to this album that I always say to myself, this would be the song that if they were to play live during this era, they should have ended the live sets with this song, just because it's so powerful, and there's something so simple about the verses, and then all of a sudden the guitar kicks in, and it's just so catchy. I love this song, and it has a bit of an 80s hair metal vibe, but it's still, I think it's a really solid track. It's my song of the week. And then, of course, there's this bonus track that's kind of tacked on to the end, Full Moon. Another track where Tolkien is doing his best homage to Ozzy. Not as good. A decent acoustic guitar on this one, but the vocal effects really do leave something to be desired. And it actually reminds me, and this, you may think I'm crazy, but it reminds me of like a psychedelic Alice in Chains, and I'm just not into this one.
So my story about this song, I guess story would be being a little too generous, but again, going back to the Chosen Ones album, I believe I had asked my parents to buy me this compilation for Christmas, and back when I didn't really own a lot of CDs, I didn't really want to own a lot of greatest hits albums when it was stuff that I mostly had, but this was the big draw, was that it was going to have some Japanese bonus tracks that had never been released in the US before. And keep in mind, this is, before you would just go on to Napster and download the one song rather than buy the album you already have again for $30. And I remember like, okay, here we go. Full Moon. Never heard this before. And I was like, oh my God, this song is so meh. Like, it's just kind of like a snoozy kind of like, I don't know. Talk about Arion. This is like one of those like slower mid-tempo Arion songs, only without the talent. It's just, yeah. I just don't think it's a very good song. And I never really considered it part of Dreamspace until just ripping it from the Chosen One CD and then tacking it onto the end of the Dreamspace on my iTunes. But to quote you in Ralph's Basement when MVP missed his cue coming out, this never happened.
Well said, and a fitting tribute to the album.
I will say this: you made me very curious with you mentioning the band playing live. So I decided to pull up a track list from 1994 set list, I should say, just to see what Stratovarius was playing at this time, where they literally had 3 albums to their name at this point. But they opened the show with Shattered, believe it or not.
Really?
And they end the show with Chasing Shadows.
Wow. Go figure. All right.
Yeah. They also played Fourth Reich, Dreamspace, Magic Carpet Ride, Reign of Terror, Tears of Ice, and We Are the Future. So nice selection from this. And then they kind of sprinkled in some, actually only 3 other songs from the previous albums, Fire Dance and Fright Night from Fright Night, and Hands of Time from Twilight Time. And then they played the song Stratovarius, which at that point hadn't been released yet. It's the instrumental track from Fourth Dimension, so I thought that was interesting. But boy, I wonder if anybody's got a bootleg of that, because I'd love to see a Timo Tolkki fronted Stratovarius bootleg. That would be very cool.
I am with you. Morbid curiosity is definitely taking over here. I have 2 questions for you this week. This is normally where I say, give me your score on a scale of 1 to 10. And I'm obviously asking that as well. But my other question is, going into the week, does the number you're about to give it stand up to the number you thought you were going to give it?
No, it's higher than I thought I would, if I'm being honest. It just had been so long since I listened to this thing start to finish. But in all honesty, like, just take out Thin Ice and pretend there was never a bonus track, and this is a damn good album start to finish for me. So I have it at a 8.375. I was wavering between 8.25 and 8.5, but I felt one was too low, one was too high. So let's go 8.375. Man, I think that it could have been a little bit higher if maybe they trimmed the fat a little bit. If this was maybe like an 11-song album, and they just tightened it up. But like I said before, I think it was bold. It was a bold album to make a 63-minute power metal album. After like their last album was like 40 minutes. I think that this is the beginning of really seeing Stratovarius kind of come into their own, and you know, you can go back and listen to our Fourth Dimension episode to talk, where we talk about the follow-up album. But I have a lot of fond memories of this album, and I'm glad I got to go back and listen to it again, because I think it really reminded me how good it was, and really how important it was in the history of the band.
It's well said, and I'm not going to argue with any of that. It was just a little bit lower for me, and I'll say why. Going into it, I had preconceived notions of and the fond memories and the nostalgia, so I thought the album in my mind was better than it actually is now that I listen to it. I think that it's all over the map. There's certain songs that I'm not fond of. I mentioned a couple of them, obviously. There's other songs that are good, and there's certain songs that are fantastic. But when you put it all together as the total package, it's a 7 for me. I think I probably, going into it, would have said it's about a 7.5, maybe a 7.75, but I'm going to give it a 7. I definitely enjoyed parts of it. It's above average for sure. It's just that there's certain dead spots which I just couldn't get over with, despite multiple listens to the disc this week. So that's what we got. It's a 7. At some point, we really should do Fright Night just for the hell of it, because I think it would be an interesting exercise. Like I said, I have not heard that album in 25 years.
Futility, or
yeah, that's to be determined, I guess. But yeah, moving away from Stratovarius for a second, a couple of news items which I think are definitely noteworthy. The first, some sad news. Keith Menzer has passed away, and for those that don't know who Keith Menzer is, he's the brains and brawn behind Power Mad, which was a festival in Baltimore, Maryland in the late 90s that was really the precursor to Prog Power, which we talk about so often on this show. He was also the founding member and guitar player a bass player rather, and keyboard player for a band called Mystic Force, which had some popularity in the progressive scene in the early 80s, and they had a bit of a resurgence in the 90s, obviously, with Power Mad. I'm not totally familiar with the Mystic Force stuff. I've listened to some of it, but it's been some time. I'm no expert, but just a real sad story to hear someone so young pass away, who was so influential in something that you and I are obviously a big part of with going to Prague Power every year. So some sad news and some happier news. Something you brought to my attention. Testament is without a drummer again. I feel like we announce this constantly, but this time it's for a short run of shows that they're doing on the West Coast. You want to tell them
they're turning into Spinal Tap.
Yeah, it's comical in a way. But as they hit the road with Exodus and Death Angel, they have a very interesting drummer joining them for this run of shows. You want to tell everyone who it is?
I would like to. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting. They are being joined by Chris Dovis from Seven Spires, which
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I had a feeling, and I would have never guessed that. I mean, a talented drummer, no question, but I never thought of him as a thrash guy. But they recruited him to play drums on this tour, which has me curious. I'm sure he'll do an admirable job. But
I'll tell you what has me curious. Like, where does Testament get like wind of Seven Spires drummer and say, like, this is the guy we want to have come on tour with us? I think that speaks volumes for the band and the talent involved.
I mean, you're talking about a band that has had some like who's who of drummers over the years, and now they're bringing in Chris. Kudos to them. I think it's a very bold move, so I'm impressed by that. I wish them all the best. And one other piece of news, which is really fascinating for me, and I'm going to fall on the sword here. Merciful Fate announced their first U.S. and North American tour in over 2 decades with Creator as direct support.
Creator
Kicks off October 25th in Dallas, ends November 16th in Atlanta, doing a West Coast swing and then coming back east before finishing in the South. Merciful Fate is a band that I know nothing about. I know King Diamond. I have a lot of his solo stuff. I've listened to that. I am woefully ignorant when it comes to this band. And as a result, I've kind of made the executive decision that in about 2 weeks, we're going to cover some Merciful Fate. I won't reveal the album at this point, but I think we're going to get some special guests to join us when we do our Merciful Fate episode. I am really excited to kind of delve deep into this band because I just don't know enough about them. So I will just kind of let the cat out of the bag. That's going to be in 2 weeks because I just don't know anything, and I feel like it's timely.
I know less than you. So
there you go.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a real lesson for me. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I always enjoy a guest or two. So yeah, that'll be good. But more current affairs. What are we talking about next week?
So I was going through the archives, right, and I was going back. I'm like, this is episode 112 or something like that. And I was
this is 113.
It's 113. See, yeah. I even I'm behind. I was looking back, and I know we've done a lot of power metal, and we've done a lot of prog. We've done prog rock. We've done, the Monkees. We've done Green Day. We've done a lot. We've done black metal. We've done melodic death metal. But there's a genre that we just haven't touched, and I think oh God, we're gonna do an album. We're gonna do our first death metal album. But hear me out.
Crap.
I think you might actually like this. I am not that familiar with the album, but I know a couple of songs off of this particular release. And it's good enough that Epica has covered this band and a song off of this album. So if Epica can do it, you're going to be able to stomach it. And
tell me it's After Forever.
Yeah, not quite. This album is widely regarded as one of the best death metal albums of all time, and it actually is known because it has some proggy elements to it, which, for our purposes, might redeem it in your eyes. But we're actually going to do the band Death, and we're going to do their 1995 release, Symbolic. I am really curious to hear your thoughts on this album.
Yeah, me
Chuck
too.
Schuldner's brainchild with the song Crystal Mountain, which, like I said, Epica has covered that song both live and I think even in the studio as well. Strap in, bud. It's gonna be a good week.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, listen. It's the next 3 weeks are going to be a lot of new stuff for me. Even though it might not be that new in the world, I'm going to be learning stuff. So
New to you. So we got Death on tap next week.
If I haven't heard it, it's new to me.
Merciful Fate the following week, and then we go way back into the archives for our October request of the week. So we got some good stuff ahead, and then you'll be finally able to pick an album in mid-October.
Yeah, hopefully a month will be enough time for me to come up with something. So.
And to cleanse your palate from all the shit I made you listen to over the last couple.
I know
I'm
gonna have to listen to Atlantis like 16 times.
It's a palate cleanser. To everyone out there, we appreciate the love and support. We look forward to releasing more podcasts in the future, and I wish you nothing but a fun week as we strap in and listen to some classic Florida death metal.
Yeah, well, the next time we talk, you will no longer be in your 30s. So,
thanks for the reminder, kid. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting week to say the least. I look forward to seeing you in person and then recording some death next week.
Yes, we have a live production meeting on Friday night at a local bar. So,
which is why we're doing this episode in advance of that.
We have our three producers will be joining us to hopefully tell us what we should be doing. Brian will probably come up with some grandiose ideas that we don't have the time or money to make happen, but. And Nick is going to tell us that we are way better than we really are, and Mike is going to play some air violin like old times. So,
looking forward to it. Here's the 40. I will talk to you soon, bud. Enjoy. Have a safe trip down, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.